Hello, world. Welcome to the Shannon Joy Show. Hello, world, and welcome to the Shannon Joy Show. We are broadcasting from the Joy Virtual Studio right here in the beautiful Finger Lakes region of New York State. It is so good to be with all of you. It is Friday, July 18th. Thank you, Jesus. The end of yet another very busy broadcast week, and I am so thankful in a very special, exclusive, in-depth interview with a new friend of the Shannon Joy Show, but someone who will hopefully become an old friend and a regular contributor. I am so thrilled to welcome Jim Ferguson into the Joy Virtual Studio today to talk about a whole host of issues, particularly right around the bottom of the hour, Leeuwarden in the North Netherlands, an absolutely astounding case that is putting the entire COVID fraud and the globalists on trial. He has been reporting on this, saying it could be leading up to a new Nuremberg 2.0. Very important story being told by a very important freedom fighter, Jim Ferguson. He's the founder of Freedom Train International. He's building a network of international freedom fighters in a new resistance to go up against the globalists, the anti-human agenda. He has gotten it right on so many of the issues that you care about. He does believe that humanity itself is under attack by globalists, as many of us in this audience believe as well. He was also a former parliamentary candidate with the Brexit Party in England. He fought for British independence from the EU. We love all those positions. And of course, you can find him on X. He has a huge following there. Jim Ferguson, UK is his handle, all the way from across the pond. Jim, thanks for being with us today. I'm such a big fan.
Oh, hey, Shannon, I'm a fan of your show as well, and it's an absolute pleasure for me to be here. Thank you so much.
Oh, my word. Well, this is the first time you're on the show, and like you're big time. All right. Everyone knows who you are, but this is your first time on the Shannon Joy Show. And so before we get into your big picture, what you are making of the politics of the day, the similarities between the US and the UK, and this astounding story out of Leeuwarden that we're going to get into, everyone needs to be paying attention to the persecution, severe persecution of the attorney, the lead attorney who has brought this case. Absolutely fascinating. But I would love just for the audience to get to know you and kind of hear your story. Who were you before COVID? Who are you now after COVID? How have you kind of changed your thinking? And just give us a little background on you, your history, your platform, and your mission as we launch this in-depth conversation with Jim Ferguson.
Well, thank you so much indeed. It's always an honor to be on with our American friends across the pond. I love America, and I love all our wonderful American patriots and friends and allies. My story is kind of unusual. I was been in traditional business for a long time. I was never really on social media much. And in fact, I only got onto X when I became politically active with the Brexit Party, and that was in May of 2019. And I fought as a very serious political candidate right the way through into the European elections, then into the Westminster parliamentary elections as well. And I got recruited very deeply into the Brexit Party. I was working from HQ in London, and I was put in charge of teams to background and check the vetting for other prospective parliamentary candidates. So they said to me to start a Twitter account, which I did, and I ran it through to the December of 2019, and I got to the dizzy heights of 2,800 followers, and then the pandemic hit. And a few years before that, I had purchased a little farm, so I went back to that. I was putting up new fences, taking in some more livestock, experimenting with different sheep breeds and things like that. And then about 2 years after that, I was out with the dogs, walking across the fields, and Twitter just flashed into my mind. I hadn't posted anything for a long time. And I
Mm.
actually thought maybe I should do something about this. So I went in, had a coffee, sat down, and I thought I'm just going to get rid of it because I'm not using it anymore. Went into the settings. My finger was hovering over the delete button, and then I thought, I wonder if there's anybody still in there. So I had a quick look, and there was still 1,800 people following me. So I thought, you know what? I'm not just going to just disappear. I'm going to say goodbye to everybody. So I went out, set up the tripod, and then I changed my mind at last minute, and I just said something kind of random. I just said, "Hey guys, hope you're doing all right. I'm doing fine. This is what's happening, etc., etc." And the response was really quite incredible because people said, "Hey Jim, it's great to see you back. What do you
Yeah.
think about this and that?" Cut a long story short, the channel exploded. I got invited onto other shows. I went to the United States by invitation. I was across 8 different states from
Wow.
North Dakota all the way down, all the flyover territory. I wanted to see it, and I drove everywhere. So I spent about 3 weeks doing that. I was on stage. There was hundreds of people came along, and all the way down to Denver, Colorado, and then I went down to Alabama for about 4 days
Mm.
before I came back to the UK. And not long after that, about 10 days after I got back to London, I was invited over to Canada. So I went to Canada, to Ottawa. I was there with Christine Anderson, a member of the European Parliament, and Eva
Wow.
Vlaardenbroek, a large influencer from the Netherlands. Hung out with those guys, and I met all the leaders of the Canadian trucker convoy, Tamara Lich, Chris Barber, Harold Juncker, and a whole host of Veterans for Freedom veterans, and had a great time. But when I came back, I was so inspired with what I'd seen. And of course, we'd all seen the Canadian truckers doing all their things about the COVID mandates, fighting back, holding the line. And I was incredibly inspired by them. So I decided that I wanted to do something similar, but on an international basis.
Mm.
And I spoke to a couple of business colleagues, told them what I wanted to do. And they said, well, it's very ambitious, but if anybody can do it, it probably would be you. And they
Wow.
were very successful people, a lot more successful than me. So I was looking for their guidance, and that's what they said. So I spent 15 months building networks across the United States, Canada, and literally all over the world, Australia, New Zealand, Europe, UK. And I launched Freedom Train International in February 2024, and it blew my mind because it
Wow.
exploded. Hundreds of thousands of members all across the world. We've now actually got ambassadors in Australia, New Zealand, Denmark, Germany, Norway, the UK, multiple in Canada, and it's just snowballed. And the channel is the size it is now. I never ever thought it would grow the way it did, but it has. And here we are doing things that I would never have thought I would have been doing. I was never really that bothered about social media, but there you go. So I'm interviewing and appearing on wonderful shows like yours. And I'm having a ball, having a great time, but a lot of hard work too. And I've been traveling extensively over Europe these last 2, 3 months.
Well,
But
I am
here we
so
are.
yeah, listen, I'm so thankful for all the work that you're doing. Your Twitter handle puts out such great information. And I think it's very clear to people paying attention, especially at the outset of the COVID pandemic and the lockdowns. This was an international plan, and we've seen the work of Sasha Latapova, Debbie Lerman pointing out very clearly through documentation that it was a NATO-led international military operation, right? So the plan is global, the resistance is local. And this is why I love how you're bringing up local groups from all over the world in different countries, different languages, because we all understand the language of tyranny and we understand the language of globalism, and there has to be a pushback for that. So that is Freedom Train International. Can you tell us a little bit about just the structure of that organization and how you are connecting these groups? We're facing the same type of globalism, Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, the Great Reset, all of the things that they have in store for us and over the next couple years with transhumanism and the expansion of artificial intelligence and the technocracy, which is absolutely terrifying. It is an ideology. But how does Freedom Train International kind of play into the resistance to those type of things and empower people in all these different countries?
Well, the structure is built very similarly to how I used to run my businesses. And instead of it being top down, because everybody's used to seeing the managing director and it comes all the way
Right.
down to the operations and So what I did, I always took that and turned it on its side. And I used to like to interview the staff as well. I used to
Mm,
sometimes sit in with other management team members and explain to them that we're pretty much all on the level. We have different responsibilities and roles. And that's
mm,
how Freedom Train International is as well. I don't tell anybody what to do. We discuss things, we agree on different topics or different themes, and we do put out pretty regular 4-hour live specials on X when we're running a special show. It could be on a different subject. It could be Agenda 2030. It could be transhumanism. We've been doing that now for some time, and when we do, usually we're the biggest live audience on X when it's running.
wow.
Um, so we're reaching a lot of people. The kind of concepts that we're looking at, though, is uniting humanity, because even powerful countries like the United States, and thank goodness we've got a president in there that's putting America first, sealing the border, taking all of these things on board. But in Europe, in Europe and UK, Western civilization, we see a lot of challenges. Agenda 2030 and the 17 Sustainable Development Goals are actually pretty horrific. They sound okay on the surface, but when you peel it back, you realize it's actually really tyrannical and quite dystopian. So we're covering all of these issues. Transhumanism is actually probably the end goal for
Mm,
what the globalists are trying to do. So there's a lot of pretty big topics that we're covering, and of course, I know if I'd spoken out during the old regime of Twitter, Jack Dorsey, I'd have been thrown off X like so many other people were. So I've got to give a shout out to Elon Musk, who has been reposting my work, I have to
okay.
say,
Oh,
and also President Trump reposted one of my posts there about 3 weeks ago. So I was blown away when I found out about that.
well, very interesting. The perspective here in the US might be a little bit different on some of those guys, or at least here on this show.
I
But
know.
we're keeping an eye on all of it. Politics, it is a blood sport here in the US, and things are a little bit nutty. But I do want to look at kind of your higher, the 40,000 foot vantage point of how you see, what is the globalist agenda. I know the World Health Organization is poised to enact another pandemic preparedness treaty in just a couple days. I think tomorrow, if it's
Yeah.
Friday here, and they've learned nothing from the COVID era. In context, from your experience with COVID and the lockdowns and the vaccine mandates, and this dystopian, tyrannical, lockdown of so many people across the globe. How does that fit into the globalist agenda? How would you define what that agenda is, and what are the elements of it that are so dangerous to humans, to humanity, in your opinion?
Well, what I'm seeing is the control factors. They seem to be obsessed with the year 2030,
Yes.
and all of that's leading up. It's not that far away when you think about it. And we're now through 2025. They're wanting all of these control measures in place by 2030, and they're talking about digital ID for everybody in the world. They're talking about 15-minute smart cities. I call them gulags because they're
Mm,
really just like prisons, and they'll have geofencing, which means that you will be monitored in those smart cities. They're talking about central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, and Ursula von der Leyen, Madame Lagarde of the IMF in the European Union, they have said that by October this year, they're going to start implementing it. And when I was
mm,
across the United States, I talked to a lot of people on stage there about what was coming. And it's now bearing out because it looks like it is potentially coming to the United States as well. Let's hope it doesn't, but it probably will in some kind of form. And there are cities like Oxford in England where they've been running these trials in these 50-minute smart cities. So it's all
whoa.
about controlling people. CBDCs are going to take away your privacy. They're going to be able to control your money. And if you spend it on ammunition or fuel or too much meat, well, they can stop you. And the other thing about the 15-minute smart cities, because of the geofencing, the sort of digital walls that they're going to have there, your money might not work if you leave that designated district. And yes, they're calling it districts just like out of the Hunger Games, if you've ever seen that.
Wow.
So
Wow.
yeah, yeah.
It's very interesting to see the similarities in UK and the US, right? They're rolling this out here in the US as we speak. Tragically, right now, under the Trump administration, with the big, beautiful bill, very serious elements of the technocracy, vast expansion of AI, liability protection for AI companies and tech companies for 10 years. I believe it was Starlink or Stargate. I think it's Stargate is the massive data mining project that's put into place, trillions and trillions of dollars. And so it's rolling out here. I mean, it is definitely happening. They're calling them freedom cities here in the US, not 15-minute cities. They're calling it a private bank, stablecoin, Tether, Bitcoin. It is a private banking digital currency under this administration, but has all of the elements of a government-led central banking digital currency. So it's all the same aspects. They just market it differently, which I just find to be so terrifying and interesting at the same time. So we're beginning to wage, the resistance to that. How do you see COVID-19 fitting into those larger plans? What do you think the big story was on COVID-19 and how that prepared us or played into where they're taking things?
Well, it's very interesting. A great question, because the second time I went to Canada, after I'd come back, met all of the leaders there of the Canadian Freedom Convoy, when I came back, I was invited over as a guest speaker across 3 different provinces. So I was in Calgary, I was in Winnipeg, Manitoba, I was in Ontario, I was in Vancouver. And I was there with 2 other speakers. One was Professor Matthias Desmond, he's a great author.
Yes.
And the other was Dr. Brian Ardis from Louisiana. And we were all giving our own deliveries to the audiences that were there. And one of the things that Dr. Brian Ardis was doing was he was showing blood samples under an electron microscope, which appeared to show nanotechnology.
Mm.
And then he was putting little pipettes of nicotine solution in, which seemed to destroy it. And I had great conversations with him. And basically, he was saying that some of the vaccines appear to have this nanotechnology in them, which would once again lead into the likes of Yuval Noah Harari, the chief advisor to Klaus Schwab, the founder of the World Economic Forum. In actual fact, they're talking about programmable humans. This goes right into transhumanism. And I
Yes.
think that the COVID vaccines, the mRNA shots, I mean, I don't even like to call them vaccines, Shannon, because they weren't in the traditional sense vaccines. There was graphene oxide that's been proven beyond a shadow of a doubt by other laboratories in Spain and other places. So why would you be putting that in there unless there was another reason for it? And of course, we've seen a lot of excess deaths as a result of that. It's deeply concerning, but it could be tied into their desire to control people. We see these types of things like freedom cities, as you call them. That's a great name, isn't it? Freedom cities.
Oh,
We call it 15-minute smart cities because
right.
they are selling it as being very convenient.
Mhm.
Everything will be in reach within 15 minutes of walking or cycling.
Yeah.
So these things are real. It's no longer conspiracy theory any longer, and the evidence is overwhelming that there was serious harms done to millions of people around the world. And the whole reason that I'm standing up and doing what I'm doing is because I believe that we need to unite as patriots in America and in the United Kingdom, where our countries are so closely aligned anyway. And
Right.
yes, we're different. Canadians are the same, but there's a lot of similarities. So I'm building these networks to unite people. I'm just back from Ireland, actually, and I was invited over there to try to unite the different factions into a cohesive Irish alliance. And
Wow.
that's been going extremely well. So, yes, there's a lot of things I'm doing, but it's all about humanity. I love humanity, and I just think that they did actually declare war on it about 4 or 5 years ago now, and I think this was pre-planned. I don't think this was a random thing. Those at the very top of the pyramid knew exactly what they were doing, which is why they have to be held accountable, Sharon.
I'd love to ask you about that pyramid and who is, that's always like the critical question, like who's behind this. But I did want to first ask, and speaking of the 15-minute cities in the UK, there you're a little bit further ahead of the United States, although we are seeing the surveillance cameras go up in New York City. We're seeing the beginning of that surveillance grid using drones and tragically, potentially technology if they can achieve that. In the UK, I did a show a few months ago about these Blade Runners who were going around the UK and like tearing down these. So they're, under the cover of darkness, they'll go in and they'll rip down these cameras and take funny pictures of them in like a baby carriage or on a teeter totter, and it's like the best thing. Can you tell us about the resistance in the UK? Like, I know every
Yeah.
country is different politically. Here in the US, it's really both political parties are in it together, pushing this agenda for the most part. Is it like that in the UK? And what does the resistance look like from your corner of the world?
Well, in London, the Blade Runners formed. They kind of one of these grassroots types movements, and they started off sort of individually going around. And what they were doing was they were cutting down ULEZ cameras, ultra low emission zone cameras. These were very invasive camera technology that was put up to charge people for having their cars in certain areas within London, which was adding a huge bill to people's daily lives. I mean, it's really quite off the charts. And so the Blade Runners came along, and what they started to do was to cut these cameras down, and and they still are incredibly effective. They can't catch them. Nobody knows who they are.
Great.
A friend of mine went down to London about a year ago to sort of investigate it, and he actually spoke to some of them, but obviously didn't know who their identity were. But this is what they're doing. So London has got the Blade Runners. I don't think it's happening in any other cities that I'm aware of, but it's certainly a resistance movement in London that is growing, and they're cutting down cameras as soon as they're being put up. They get cut down with these sort of bolt cutters and the things that cut pipes, and
Mhm.
yeah, it's happening all over London.
Now, what about the legitimate resistance? Okay, so they're engaging in some civil disobedience, we'll call it, in order to do the right thing. But what does the resistance look like politically in the UK? Is it another situation where both political parties really in lockstep? They market it differently, but they're still kind of marching along, to that greater agenda of a global governance. Are you getting any reckoning for COVID atrocities, lockdowns, hospital deaths, vaccine injury and death? I'm very curious how things are playing out in the UK.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things I found out when I was doing my research over a period of 15 months before we actually launched Freedom Train International was I was able to learn a huge amount about American politics, Canadian politics, what was going on in Australia, New Zealand. And what became apparent, this sort of phrase, the uniparty system. And
Right.
basically, in the United Kingdom, we have the Conservative Party, we have the Labour Party as being the sort of the two main parties. But both the Labour Party and the Conservative Party are not what they used to be. They are now completely infiltrated by globalist agendas.
Mm,
And these two parties kind of almost work hand in glove. They try on the surface to make it sound like they're different, but it's exactly the same policies that are being put forward by the World Economic Forum and other globalist entities.
mm,
So people are actually very worried about it because no matter who you vote for, up until quite recently, you got the same people or the same types of people in place. And what you won't be aware of, because it's only happened just very recently, is that a good friend of mine called Ben Habib, who was in the Brexit Party with me, he's a very successful London businessman, and he's also a former member of the European Parliament representing London. He had gone into Reform UK, which used to be the Brexit Party. They changed the name, and the structure was a little bit different. And he went in as deputy leader there, but didn't like it. He left, and he has just set up Advance UK. And I joined the party, and he invited me to join what's called Advance UK College, which is going to be setting policy on healthcare, education, defense, all of these types of things. So that has just been launched, and they have done remarkably well. So I am now politically active once again,
Yeah, here
and
we go.
here we go again. Yeah, but it's enjoyable. I mean, I really like Benabib. They've got an amazing team around them, so I'm very happy to be joined there. But what I've been finding, Shannon, in terms of what's going on across Europe, because I was flown over for the presidential elections in Romania to cover it, and I worked with George Simeon, the presidential candidate, and his team very closely. Then I went to Hungary. I met senior members of the cabinet of Viktor Orban, the prime minister there. And I spent time in other countries as well. I was also in Paris, France. And I had the great fortune of meeting members of the French Parliament in the National Assembly. And I even got to meet Marine Le Pen, who is the next presidential candidate there too. So there's a lot of activity where we must unite the patriots across Europe and, of course, the UK as well. And this unity is so important because unity is strength. It's the only way we're going to push back against this globalist agenda. And it is working. But there's a lot of work still to be done. But yes, there's a huge amount happening right across Europe as well. And I'm involved in a lot of it.
Yes, I agree, and I do believe that the culture there are political things. How do you resist, right? They have all the money, all the power, all the parties, all the infrastructure, a lot of the corporate structure. They have basically everything, right? And it's just we, the little people. But what I have found is that the culture can rise up and just disobey, right? Like there is so much power in spitting yourself out of the system and just saying no, refusing to comply. We saw in the United States of America what 35% of the country said, oh, hell no, to the COVID-19 vaccines, refused to take them. And many lost their jobs, they lost their businesses, they lost their livelihoods. But they set up the perfect control group. It was completely unique and American that, this large group, and that has built out of that has come that the medical freedom movement. And you can begin to see how powerful just saying no. I don't want your digital ID. I don't want your digital money. I don't want your surveillance in my city. I don't want to engage in, the fake WWE wrestling of the two political parties, like just declaring that independence and emancipating from their narrative, I think is so powerful. Do you agree? I mean, what do you think the key is to winning our freedom and our liberty and defeating these globalists at their agenda of what very, very obviously appears to be global control using digital technology and AI in the 21st century? What does victory look like to you?
Well, I've got to say, I have huge admiration for the American people because let's not forget 1776, the Bill of Rights, the Constitution. These are things enshrined in law. Freedom of speech is there. The founding fathers did a remarkably good job of protecting the American people. And, it sometimes surprises people when I tell them this, but only 3% of Americans actually fought for their independence from the British realm, from the crown. Only 3% stood up and actually fought. And it was remarkable that 3% were able to win American independence from the United Kingdom, from Great Britain. And actually, if just 3% of every nation were to stand up and say, we do not comply, we're not going along with this, there's not a police force, there's not a military that will be able to stop them.
That's right.
The biggest war is the war of our minds. Once we overcome the fear in our own minds and believe in what we can do and achieve, it's remarkable what we can actually accomplish. And Freedom Train International has a wealth of information on it that teaches people how to get ready, how to be prepared, from food stocks, water filtration systems, medical kits, emergency evacuation plans, how to protect your home, how to buy land. So we cater for those who are just new and just newbies. They're just beginners. They've never done anything like this before, all the way through to the intermediate stages, all the way through to advanced levels where people are actually looking at buying small holdings, perhaps even relocating to other countries. So we're involved at every strand of that. And as I always tell people, Sharon, on the show and on Freedom Train International, we have a saying, don't be scared, be prepared,
I
and
love it.
learn as much as you can. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Wouldn't that piss off the globalists if there was an exodus from the major central urban cities into the countryside and we just spread out all over the world and set up our little farms and our little communities and these self-sufficient situations? Like, that would totally, like, they would hate. That's exactly the opposite of what they want. They want us all corralled, all connected, all tethered to the same control systems. And I do believe it is as small as 3%. And this is something that I have told my audience for 12 years. Bottom up non-compliance, local organization. It starts with the individual and being prepared. And I agree with you 100%. We're going to go to a quick break. Today, we are joined by the Jim Ferguson, hopefully a new long-term friend of the Shannon Joy Show. Follow him on the Twit. His handle is at Jim Ferguson UK. And please consider joining Freedom Train International. Great organization. When we come back, let's get right to this absolutely horrifying case out of Leeuwarden in North Netherlands. Very important case, basically putting everything on trial. COVID-19, so many of the atrocities committed during COVID, the fraud, the vaccines, but also the future agenda, that agenda 2030 of mass surveillance, transhumanism, and technocracy. This case is everything, and it is apparently so dangerous to the elite global class that they have arrested and detained the lead attorney. It's outrageous. He is still in prison today. The case being picked up by his co-counsel, doing an amazing job. And Jim Ferguson has been on the ground reporting on this case. So we're going to get all of the details. We need to bring as much attention to this case. A great injustice is happening to this amazing attorney, Arno van Kessle. And we want everyone to know his name. So we're going to spend the rest of the program diving into this case, the merits of this case, what is happening today, and how we can help this attorney. So keep it tuned right here on the Shannon Joy Show. We'll be back with Jim Ferguson in just a moment. Colonial Metals Group. Get your gold and silver strategy put together today. This is, again, nothing is changing. So what does that mean? It means that we are still in a situation here in the U.S. With the economy. It's like a train barreling down the track, set on fire, 90 miles an hour, with a drunken conductor heading right off a cliff. Like, that's kind of where we are with this economy. And so, especially with the US dollar, our currency, they have taken this as far as they possibly can. Everyone understands this, and this is why gold is now tier 1 status. That's what Ed Dowd was talking about. Gold is money good, meaning you could buy a house with gold. We could see a situation, especially with Texas and Florida now adopting gold and silver as legal tender. That is the first step to their ability to establish a sovereign bank. You have saved your entire life. You're a retiree, and your money is wrapped up in a 401k, IRA, and it's the stock market or even federal government instruments. You have to consider physical gold and silver as a hedge. Doesn't mean you have to go in and go all in on it. It could be a portion, it could be a quarter, less than that, but everyone needs to be hedging right now with physical gold and silver, and also physical gold and silver backing up your retirement. As you guys know, Colonial Metals Group this company is amazing. I trust this company. I know all the primaries. We've been working with them for years, and they take amazing care of this audience. So you're going to want to go to colonialmetalsgroup.com/joy, colonialmetalsgroup.com/joy. See if you qualify for $7,500 in free silver. This is an amazing company. They are not going to give you a pressure sell. They're not going to manipulate. They don't do fear selling in any capacity. They just give you all the information that you need and let you make the decision that is right for you and your family. So colonialmetalsgroup.com/joy. Welcome back, everyone, to the Shannon Joy Show. We are joined today by Jim Ferguson. He is across the pond out of the UK, founder of Freedom Train International, warrior for humanity, for basic freedom, for our founding principles. You can follow him on the twit at Jim Ferguson UK. Thank you for all the work that you have done. And yeah, we're right in this. The battle, I think, it kind of started with COVID. And it's not over. We still aren't discussing COVID era atrocities. We are not able to even discuss the vaccines themselves in most of these countries. And this is why some of these cases are so important. So I'm just going to hand things over to you. Take as much time as you need to explain. It's a big case in the Netherlands. So important, as I mentioned before we hit the break. They've arrested, without charges, by the way, last I checked, the lead attorney, are detaining him. I don't believe he has counsel. I don't believe that he's been able to have access to his family. It's just an extraordinary situation that every American needs to hear and be concerned about. We want to bring as much attention as possible. So if you could explain first the situation with this attorney, and then we'll get into the nuts and bolts of this case and how important it is in establishing a new Nuremberg 2.0, which is exactly what we need. But go ahead.
Well, thank you so much indeed, Shannon. And look, what I was aware maybe about 10 months ago that there was a court case that was being brought against some high-profile individuals. But it was only really within the last sort of 5 or 6 days that it became very apparent just to what level it was going on. So Arno van Kessle, as you've quite correctly said, is the lead lawyer in this case, representing around 7 families who are worried and upset about what happened to their family members. And what has happened is, about 4 weeks ago, Arno van Kessel was raided at his home by specialist armed police officers. He was blindfolded, he was handcuffed, and he was taken to a maximum security prison in the Netherlands, where he was detained. This is where maybe somebody that's committed terrorism offences might go. It's a high security prison. And he's been detained without charge. So he's been there the last 4 weeks, probably nearer 5 weeks now, without charges being brought against him. And a lot of people believe that this may have been an attempt to stop the court case from going ahead, to intimidate the lawyers themselves. But Peter Stassel, his colleague, was able to get the court papers to the court and present them to the legal teams there and to the judge. So the court case went ahead. Now, I've been in the Netherlands many, many times over the course of the last couple of years, frequently actually. I've interviewed Dutch farmers, I've interviewed freedom fighters. I know a lot of people there, and I became good friends with a lawyer from the Netherlands called Maaike ter Horst. And I told her that I was coming, and she was actually going to the court that day. So she was in her lawyer robes, and when I got there, there were hundreds of people. I mean, probably 500-600 people
Wow.
outside the court. Yeah, it was huge. And people had come from all over the Netherlands. And of course, the police panicked a little bit, and they shut the doors and they sealed them. And I think they were frightened to open them. Not that anybody was doing anything violent or out of order, but they were just there in large numbers. So I had made arrangements to get special access into the courthouse. But of course, the police wouldn't come to the door. I couldn't show them my press pass or my identification. They wouldn't open the doors. So when I got there, I set up my camera equipment. And of course, as soon as I did that, people wondered who I was. And some people came over, and then they realized who I was, and it went round. And then they started to chant, hundreds of them, "Let Jim in, let Jim
Wow.
in."
No way.
So,
No
yeah,
way.
yeah. So it was like unbelievable. So they were delighted I was there because there was no other journalists apart from one other that I did an interview with in attendance. No mainstream media outlets whatsoever. Anyway, eventually I got in through another door and I met Maaike. She was dressed in her lawyer robes. I went in with her. I met one of her colleagues and I sat and listened to the evidence that was being given. So this is what's called preliminary evidence. Now, what's really interesting is that the people who are the defendants in this are Bill Gates, Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum, Mark Rutte, the former Prime Minister of the Netherlands and now head of NATO, and there were journalists and others who have been named in this very, very serious case. And what's very incredible about this is that the charges that were read out in court are the following: genocide, the use of biological weapons, mass deception, psychological operations, and a cover-up and fraud. I mean, the charges are very, very serious. And that's why when I learned about this, I wrote an article which has gone viral. I don't know where it's sitting at the moment, but certainly probably close to 3 million in views just within the last few days, because I likened it to the Nuremberg trials, because that was the same charges that those people faced back then as well. Now, Bill Gates didn't send a legal team, but everybody else did. Maybe Bill Gates thinks this is just going to go away, and if he didn't send a legal team, it might draw less attention. But in actual fact, this isn't going away. The charges are so serious, crimes against humanity, that it could lead to them being summoned to the court in Leeuwarden, which is in the far northern parts of the Netherlands. And if that was to happen, I don't see how the mainstream media could ignore it any longer, because these are very high profile people. Some might say famous, others might argue infamous, but these individuals are being accused of some of the most serious crimes. And the other incredible thing about this, Shannon, is the amount of evidence that's being presented. Now, very interestingly, we've got Catherine Austin Fitts, a former State Department official, very well known.
Yes.
We've got Sasha Latipova that you mentioned at the start of the show. I know Sasha Latipova. She's been on my show many times. And it was quite bizarre, because when I was over in Ireland, I flew from the Netherlands to Manchester and then to Ireland to work on this unity project to bring the Irish people together. But while I was there, I ended up going out for dinner with a very close personal friend of RFK. And one of the people that happened to be at that dinner I attended was none other than Catherine Austin Fitts.
Wow.
So I had a good conversation. I know, it was just unbelievable.
We call her Catherine the Great over here, by the way.
Yeah.
I coined it. Yeah. I coined it. She's amazing. Amazing. Okay, so tell me about your conversation with Catherine. She's a great witness.
Well, we had so much to talk about. I mean, I've actually featured her, and I've written articles on Catherine and her recent interviews with Tucker Carlson about the underground cities and all the CBDC stuff and all the 2030 agenda. I mean, she really knows her subject. And of course, we were talking back and forth so much. So I'm hopeful that when I go back to the Netherlands, I'll be meeting with her again and her team. And we had a great dinner, a great conversation. And I have to say, there was a former congressman at that dinner as well. So there's a lot of understanding about what is actually going on. And I have to say, it was just wonderful to be with them. But this court case, well, it's so significant. I've had people reaching out to me from all around the world, asking for me to put them in contact with the legal teams, the lawyers, because there are people in other countries that now are interested in bringing similar charges against those named individuals and others. I wrote an article today about Rishi Sunak, the former British Prime Minister. And what is absolutely astounding in this, Shannon, is that in 2017, he invested $500 million into Moderna through a shell company that he set up in the Cayman Islands, a notorious tax haven, long before the pandemic ever came. And Moderna at that point had never had a successful product to market. They were relatively unknown. Why would you invest $500 million into a company that had no track record of delivering on products, unless perhaps you knew something that nobody else did? And of course, when he became Chancellor and then Prime Minister, he rolled out further contracts for Moderna to the tune of billions of pounds of taxpayers' money, knowing that he was going to personally profit from his portfolio, all the while standing in Parliament saying the vaccines were safe and effective. Well, that article was only written about 7 hours ago. It's already in excess of 200,000 views. So what I'm doing is I'm exposing the pandemic profiteers, those that profited from it. And there's a lot of members of parliament that did. But it's a time for justice. It's time for people to get this whole COVID pandemic out into the open with clear evidence. And those people that broke the law, those people that caused deliberate harms, must be held accountable. So this court case is so significant that it may well lead to a new Nuremberg trial. And if the civil courts can't do it, perhaps then we might be looking at some form of a military tribunal. And this is where I think the United States may have to take the lead.
And so this is happening as we speak in the Dutch city of Leeuwarden, and the case is ongoing now. Now, can you tell me about the details? The charges are astounding. The defendants, I mean, you mentioned Bill Gates, Ursula von der Leyen, Albert Bourla of Pfizer, Mark Rutte, and Klaus Schwab. Nearly 200 pieces of evidence have been submitted, and including internal emails, autopsies, government contracts, whistleblower testimony. Catherine Austin Fitz, Sasha Latipova, two very, very good friends of the Shannon Joy Show. They've been on the show many, many times. That's wonderful. What are the implications if found guilty? Is this civil? Is this criminal? What would be the implications to these defendants? Is a jury going to hear this? Is a judge going to decide? Can you kind of give us an idea of what a potential outcome could be, and then how that could move us into an international court, a Nuremberg type of court situation if they're found guilty? Like, how would that work?
So one of the things that became very apparent was that the legal teams that were defending the defendants, one of them said, well, our evidence shows that the vaccines were safe and effective. Well, there was a very immediate rebuttal to that where they said, your experts have a different opinion to other people who are experts. Just because your experts say they were safe and effective doesn't mean they were. And there's enough evidence to show that they certainly weren't safe and effective. They certainly weren't effective. They certainly weren't safe. So what could happen and what will happen is that in about 5 weeks' time, the judge will make a decision on what happens next. So we're going to be waiting to find out. They're going to look at what the council, what the legal teams are discussing, what evidence is there, and they will make a decision what happens next, whether the court case is going to proceed, whether it's going to not proceed, which I think is very unlikely. I think it will proceed. And I think in the interest of justice, it must proceed. But you've got to go back to what the charges are. Crimes against humanity,
Right.
the use of biological weapons, fraud, cover-ups, psychological operations, collusion with mainstream media. And two of the defendants are journalists who are accused of going along with the safe and effective narrative, just like Richie Sunak was doing in the United Kingdom, although he's not a defendant yet, but he might be. Now, what will happen then is these are criminal charges. If they become proven, then those defendants will be facing not just criminal charges, but some of the most serious charges that you could face. Crimes against humanity, genocide, the use of biological weapons. It just doesn't get any worse than that. And these are the kind of charges that were leveled at the end of the Second World War during those Nuremberg trials. So I see similar parallels to what's going on. Now, what it would need would be possibly for the likes of the Hague, once again in the Netherlands, or even an international case to be set up that would have the power to insist that those individuals were brought to a court where they would be forced to attend. Otherwise, the International Court of Human Rights, for example, or some similar type body may issue arrest warrants. So it's entirely possible that arrest warrants could be issued for Bill Gates, for Klaus Schwab, for Mark Rutte, the former Prime Minister of the Netherlands, and Albert Bourla, the current CEO of Pfizer. Can you imagine?
I can't.
What the media would say? It's so incredible. But people are demanding justice. People are demanding justice.
even the optics, if these guys are dragged in, forced to face these charges, uh, it does so much to break apart the official global narrative that has been perpetuated and is continuing to be perpetuated even 5 years post lockdown. And so we're still not there. It's quite astounding the level of gaslighting that our governments are subjecting we the people to, acting as if COVID never happened, right? And so these families, they were damaged by the lockdowns. I mean, this is outrageous. And when you understand the scope of this case and the international implications and the potential that we could finally get to the truth and actual justice regarding what happened during COVID-19 lockdowns, it makes you understand why they have arrested this attorney, the lead attorney. This reminds me, I have to say, of the Rainer Fulmick case, another, I mean, very serious case of political persecution, and not just political persecution, actual persecution. He's in prison. I mean, Rainer is also in prison. Are you following that case as well? Do you see parallels between what he did? He was also pursuing international charges against, some of the major players in the lockdowns, in the scamdemic of 220. Do you see similarities there? And what efforts are being made to free this attorney, figure out what those charges are, and get some justice there? I mean, we need a lot of eyeballs on this case. The Rainer
Yeah.
Fulmick case as well. What do you make of that in that connection?
Well, right, Rainer Fulmick was actually arrested in Brazil, taken back under arrest to Germany, where he's been in prison since that happened. And of course, he was exposing the fraud and what was going on as well. They didn't like it. They shut him down. Very similar to what they've done to Arno van Kessel in the Netherlands. This is an attempt to intimidate, to frighten the witnesses, to frighten the other members of the legal fraternity. So what is likely to happen, though, is that this case could have a huge bearing on Reinhard Fulmich and his detainment, because if those globalists that are being put on the witness trial are brought into court and they're charged with any kinds of crimes against humanity, biological weapons, fraud, coercion, whatever it might be, then of course Reinhard Fulmich is going to be in the spotlight once again. And Freedom to
Right.
International have done features on Reinhard. We organised last Christmas to send Christmas cards to him, for example, to
Mm,
boost his morale. And what you're saying, Shannon, is so important. Arno van Kessel is a very, very good, a very, very capable lead lawyer in this case, but he's also a decent man as well. And I think it's important that we get messages of hope to him and support internationally, because it'll mean the world to him. This is something that we can't stand back and ignore any longer. These globalists are out of control. They have attacked humanity, and they're attacking what it means to be human. So
yes,
we
they
have to
are.
fight back.
Have there been any contacts made with Arno van Kessel? Do you know about his physical state? Um, does he have counsel? Are there charges? Has his family made contact? What is the status right now of him and his detention?
Well, he's still without charge. I mean, he's still being detained without charge, which in itself is a scandal, an absolute scandal. I'm in contact with other lawyers in the Netherlands, and I've reached out to them to say, look, I would like to maybe speak to his wife, to speak to the family members, and to get further details. And what I will do, Shannon, is I will send you a private message to give you an update on that just as soon as I've heard back. I've only reached out there literally within the last 24 hours. But
Mm.
it's something that we all need to be aware of. And I will come back and I will give you an update on that, Shannon, when I have some more information. But certainly the international support that he needs is incredibly
Yes,
important. Another case that I touched on was Dr. Kirk, who was facing 35 years in a federal prison in the United States because he didn't want to give people the mRNA shots. He gave them saline. He was facing very serious charges. He has now been acquitted,
right.
and he's just reached out to me to thank me for highlighting that, and I'm expecting him on the show there quite soon. So once again, another win for us, another win for the freedom fighters.
That's right. The Dr. Kirk Moore case, and it was amazing. I actually had the blessing of being out there in Salt Lake City, Utah, with Dr. Kirk Moore. Flew home on the red eye, and it was on my way home in the morning that I got the call that those charges had been dropped. So it was unbelievable, and it proves that sunlight and organization and just pushing this out from outside of these institutions is so important and can really impact. And, it was in that vein. I mean, after talking to Kirk, he's like, we've got to do this again. Like, there are other injustices happening. There are other persecutions. Rainer Fulmick was another one. We could devote an entire show to the trumped up charges and the way that they trapped him. I do believe that his arrest and detention is completely unjust. I don't believe the charges, the silly little charges of something in regarding the funding, which I think is very weak. But no, we need to support these guys, and the more eyeballs on these cases, the harder it is for them to take these people out. So thank you so much for keeping an eye on what is happening with this attorney, and keeping an eye on what is happening with Rainer Fulmick, and for your unbelievable support of Dr. Kirk Moore. I mean, I think that was, how important do you think that victory was? From my perspective, it was exactly what we needed. Like, we needed that win, and it was an unlikely win. And I think it is a bellwether, hopefully, for what is to come in the future. We, the people, are not going to stand down. We're not going to let this issue die in darkness. And I think you're a big part of that. But how important do you think that case was yourself?
Well, I agree, Shannon. It was hugely important. And I mean, anybody facing 35 years in a federal prison, I mean, my goodness, what must have been going through his mind? When I spoke to him, I featured it on the show, reached out to him. He was already following me. So I immediately followed him back, sent him a message saying, look, I've posted this out. Is there anything I can do to help your situation? Anything I can do to help you? And he said, well, I've got to talk to the attorneys and get their advice, and maybe what I can say, what I can't say. I said, well, let me know if there's anything I can do for you. And then I think might have been in the Netherlands at the time, or maybe I was heading to Ireland. It's been a whirlwind of activity.
Yes.
So I can't exactly remember, but I was so pleased. And I immediately reached out to him, and I got another message from one of his colleagues today saying, sure, when do you want to come on? And so we've got a date organized, and it's hugely important, Shannon. A great win for the good guys. And this is where I think we're starting to see the globalist narrative fall apart. Because if you think about it, 2 or 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I don't think there would have been any hope for him. It would have been another Rainer Fulmick all over again. But now things are changing. I feel a change in the air. I detect a change within the mood of people. And I have to say, Shannon, your show is a tremendous show, and I'm so honored and privileged to be on with you. Thank you for all that you're doing. It's just wonderful.
Every one of us from our own little corner of the world doing whatever we can to get the message out. I think that was the story of Dr. Kirk Moore. Thank you so much. And right back at you, everything that you're doing. But yeah, I think you're right. The momentum is there. Like, it's like we have everyone in place. We have just enough in terms of our organizations and the numbers to really begin to move the dial. And that was the case with Dr. Kirk Moore. It was one person after another telling the story, sharing it out. Really important that Dr. Mary Telly Bowden got involved, died suddenly, in that team. They brought the camera crews. In fact, they were the ones who invited me out there to make a speech and to stand with everyone. The production value was great, and they were able to make a huge difference. Very similar to your piece that you wrote that shattered apart, this case, and basically gave so many millions understanding as to what was happening. Ed Zoll of Died Suddenly was able to write a piece that was understandable, that people, could share. And so we're beginning to see an infrastructure of resistance and awareness and sunlight through like-minded organizations, which I think I think Freedom Train International is just a huge component of that. So let's keep going, right? Let's do what we can for these attorneys, for both, the one who is in Netherlands, but also Rainer Fulmick as well. Really appreciate you and everything that you're doing. Anything else you want to let the audience know you think is really important before I let you go? I know we did this last minute. You're like, you really are a rock star, man. I wanted to get you in this week if I could, because this case is so important, and man, you made it happen. But anything else that you want to let the audience know, how they can support you, and how they can be part of the movement that you're building?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, once again, thank you for all of that. I really appreciate it, Shannon, and it's been an absolute privilege to be on with you. But look, go to freedomtrainternational.org, get subscribed. There is a wealth of information. You need to know what the globalists are planning next. There is every reason to do that. Get your families ready, because the more ready you are, the more prepared you are, you're not going to be scared. You're not going to be worried. When you've got preparations in place, you don't have that fear factor, and fear is how they control us. The other thing I would say to you is the world gets darker, we get brighter, and unity is strength. There is always hope in the future. And don't be worried about these things. Just be aware and take sensible precautions and sensible preparations, and you're going to be all right. We are winning the information war, thanks to you, Sharon, thanks to all the other independent medias that are out there. And it's
Love
that,
it.
once again, God bless you. God bless the United States of America. And I'd love to be on with you. I'd love to have you on with me as well, Sharon, if we could arrange that as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we are on the same wavelength, right? Like, I love meeting like-minded people. Fear is the enemy of liberty, and you're right. Preparation is the way to combat that fear. Emancipation, independence, all that power is right within you. That's a great message, Jim. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend, and keep up that great work. We're definitely going to be keeping an eye on these cases and doing everything we can here to keep the audience up to date and let them know what they can do to push this out to everyone. We know we have to end this injustice. And yes, we do want Nuremberg 2.0. We do want justice. That is the goal. We're not going to let this die in darkness. So God bless you, my friend. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on, Shannon. A real pleasure.
Oh, absolutely. And thank you to this amazing audience, those of you who have supported the Shannon Joy Show, who have gone to theshannonjoy.com and contributed those small dollar donations, the monthly contributions, the angel investors. Guys, it is so important to keeping this little independent network that could going. It is how we keep the lights on. Also to our sponsors, Colonial Metals Group, we are so thankful for you. Our friends over at Native Path, as you guys know, a phenomenal deal right now, 41% off the unbelievable complete protein. The chocolate brand is my absolute favorite. And this is your essential protein. You need it every single day. As we age, as you hit, after you hit 50, it is harder to get the protein that you need. And as you know, enough protein is necessary to rebuild muscle, to maintain your strength, and you got to put that back into your diet. So 100% grass-fed beef protein in the Native Path Complete Protein. It is on sale, stock up sale right now. 41% off, but you have to go to Native Path Complete Protein. That is Native Path Complete Protein to get that amazing 41% off deal. It is the best, cleanest, highest value protein you're going to find on the market. So thank you to our friends over at Native Path. Of course, the satellite phone store, sat123.com. Sat123.com, as we talk about being prepared, they have everything you need for when the lights go out. Generators, they have solar panels, all of the Faraday products to protect your devices, all of your devices, from an EMP attack, and also protect you from your devices, EMF, radiation, and everything else that you can imagine. Their go bags are unbelievable. If you go to sat123.com/joy, you can always find the specials on the satellite phones, the satellite phone plans, and the specials that are unique for the Joy audience. So sat123.com/joy. Make sure you use that JOY promo code for all of your purchases so that they know we sent you. All right, guys, that's it. It's the end of the week. I hope you all have a wonderful, restful, non-stress weekend. Make sure you unplug, get out of the 24-hour news cycle. It's relentless. put your feet on the ground, get your face in the sun, spend time with your family, laugh, love, go to church, remember our natural God, all those great things. This is how we rest and rejuvenate, because we fight another day next week, and we'll be back next week to do it all again right here on the Shannon Joy Show.